Partially checked exception. The next topic, guys. Okay. Partial checked exception. Partially, right? Partially checked exception. What is partially checked exception? What is fully checked exception? This is also important. People definitely will ask you after asking what is checked exception or unchecked exception. People will ask you what is partially checked exception, what is fully checked exception. Understand? Now partially checked exception. Okay. Now let me give you one real world example. So let's suppose in Hyderabad, okay, we are going to shopping, guys. Okay, so there is a malls, right? You are going for one of the mall for shopping. So along with you, you are taking your kids also, your family also. Okay, so now in the front of shopping mall, there is a security guy, right? So he will scan your, he will scan. There is a metal detector with his hand, so he will scan with you, right? So now he will scan. So to whom he will scan, guys? Only adults he will scan, right? So and there is a metal detector also. So they will ask us to go inside that metal detector. So if we have any kind of bombs or something, so if they can easily identify. Guys, can you hear me?
Yes,
Are you
sir.
listening? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So now here if you see the security guys, usually they will scan to whom, guys? The adults. Okay. But they will not scan the kids guys. Let's suppose we have 2 years or 5 years, 6 years kids we have, right? So usually they will not scan for the kids. See here what? Here everyone is checking, or only few people are checking, few people are not checking, right? So this is what, guys? Partially checking. Understand?
Yes, sir.
Clear, everyone?
Yes,
This is
sir.
what, guys? Partially
Partially checked
checking.
exception.
Here, no one is checked. Okay. Here, all the people are not checking. Only few people are checking, few people are not checking. So this is what, guys? Partially checking. Understand? In the same way, now you want to travel from India to UK or USA. Okay, along with your family. You are taking you and your spouse along with your kids. Okay. Now you are going to international airport, right? Now we are going to him international airport. So definitely there also security will be there, right? So comparably, the mall security, they has what, guys? Fully potential security, guys, right? So they will check each and everything. So now there you see, so definitely the security guys, they will scan, even adults also, even kids also they will scan. So they will ask you, each and everyone has to go to that metal detector, right? So n number of security layers we have. Am I right or wrong? So there each and everyone will be scanned, guys. So here what? Everyone is checking. So this is what, guys? Fully checked. Am I right or wrong?
Yes, sir.
This is what, guys? Fully checked. Each and everyone is checking. Even parent also checking, and its child's also checking. It's also checking. But now we're coming to our shopping mall. Only parents are checking. Kids are not checking. Okay, so that's what here partially checking. But when I come to airport, even parent also checking, and its child's also checking. Kids also checking. So that is what fully checking. Understand? Clear, everyone? Now, coming to our technology, fully checked exceptions and partially checked exceptions. Okay, a checked exception is said to be partially checked exception. Okay, if and only if some of its child classes are unchecked. Okay, some of its child classes are unchecked. So, fully checked exception. A checked exception is said to be fully checked if and only if all its child classes also checked. Clear what I'm saying? See, what is fully checked exception means. So when you can say this is fully checked exception, okay, let me, yeah, this one. Okay, no. Let's suppose IO exception. So there is IO exception, guys, right? So IO exception is checked exception or unchecked exception, guys?
Checked
Tell me.
exception.
Checked exception, right? Here we are talking about what? Fully checked exception. Yes, we know IO exception is checked exception. But now we want to know IO exception is just checked exception or fully checked exception we want to know. How can you say IO exception is fully checked exception? When we can say a exception is said to be checked exception, if it's all its child classes also checked, then only we can say that exception is checked exception. Understand?
Yeah.
Okay, please listen carefully, guys, what I'm saying here. So here, exception is said to be checked exception, fully checked exception. Okay, if and only if all its child classes also checked. All its child classes also checked exception. Then only we can say that particular class is fully checked exception. A checked exception is said to be fully checked if and only if all its child classes also checked. Understand? Clear the statement? So now see here, IO exception. IO exception is checked exception, we know. Now we want to know IO exception is partially checked exception or fully checked exception, right? When we can say IO exception is fully checked exception, all its child classes also should be checked. All its child classes also should be checked exception. Then only IO exception we can say what? Fully checked exception. Now, what are the child classes for IO exception? End of the file exception, file not found exception, interrupted IO exception. End of the file exception is checked exception or unchecked exception?
Checked
Tell me.
exception.
Checked
Checked
exception. File not found exception is checked exception or unchecked exception?
Checked
Checked
exception.
exception.
Checked exception. Interrupted IO exception is checked exception or unchecked exception?
Checked exception.
Checked exception. Now, all these are what? Child classes for IO exception or not?
Yes,
Right?
sir.
Yes, sir.
No, all these child classes also checked exceptions or unchecked exceptions? Checked
Checked
exceptions.
exception.
So now, IO exception is fully checked exception or partially checked exception?
Fully checked exception.
Fully checked
Fully checked
exception.
exception.
Understand? Now, IO exception is what? Fully checked exception. Here, IO exception also checking. End of the file exception also checking. File not found exception also checking. Interrupted IO exception also checking. All exceptions are checking, guys. Okay? Please correlate with the data. What do you call? Airport. So everyone is
Yes.
checking here. A parent also checking and its child is also checking. So that's what here IO exception is what? Fully checked exception. Clear?
Yes, sir.
So what is fully checked exception? Clear, everyone? A checked exception is
Yes,
said
sir.
to be fully checked if and only if all its child classes also checked. So then only that particular exception we can call it as what, guys? Fully checked exception. Here IO exception is what, guys? Fully checked exception. Okay? Now we will see what is partially checked exception. Okay? A checked exception is said to be partially checked exception if and only if some of its child classes are unchecked. Understand? Some of its child classes are unchecked. Such type of exception we use to call it as what, guys? Partially checked exception. Okay? So when we can say a particular checked exception is partially checked exceptions, guys. So the exception classes, I mean the child classes, one of its child classes, if it is a unchecked exception, then that particular exception, that particular class, I mean that particular parent class, we use to call it as what? Partially checked exception. Now coming to in this exception hierarchy, there is a exception class. There is a exception class, right?
Yes,
Here.
sir.
So exception is checked exception or unchecked exception, guys? Runtime exception and its child classes, and
Yes,
error
sir.
and its child classes comes
Yeah,
under
error.
unchecked exception.
Yes,
Remaining all classes are comes under checked exception.
Checked
Now
exception.
tell me, exception is checked exception or unchecked exception?
Checked exception.
Checked exception. Exception is checked exception. Exception is what, guys? Checked exception. Understand? So here all are checked exceptions only. Under checked exception, we have two more categories. One is partially checked exception, one is fully checked exception. Understand? So here we are not talking about any unchecked exceptions. We are talking about checked exceptions only. Again, checked exceptions are divided into two types. One is partially checked exception. Second one is fully checked exception. So when we can say an exception is fully checked exception, the exception class and its child classes all are checked exception, then only we can say that particular exception is fully checked exception. Now we are coming to when we can say an exception is partially checked exception. The exception class, okay, and its child classes, one of its child classes, if it is unchecked, then we can say that particular exception is partially checked exception. Understand? Now coming to exception. Exception is what, guys? Checked exception. Now for the exception class, here runtime exception is what? Child class. IO exception is what? Child class. Interrupt exception is what? Child class. Servlet exception is what? Child class. Now among all these child classes, runtime exception comes under checked exception or unchecked exception? Tell me, guys. Unchecked exception. So
Unchecked
now
exception.
here see, for exception class, 4 child classes we have. Among these 4 child classes, one of the child class is unchecked. Right? One of the child class is unchecked.
Unchecked.
So now exception is fully checked exception or partially checked exception? Partially checked exception. Understand? Here all the kids are not checking, guys. See, one of the kid is what? Unchecked. This is partially checking. Understand? Please correlate with the shopping mall real world example. Right? So for the exception class is checked. Okay, exception class is checked exception. Yes, compulsory checking, fine. But exception class has what? 4 child classes. One is what? Runtime exception. Runtime exception comes under checked or unchecked? Unchecked. Unchecked means compiler will not check. Right? Compiler is not checking for runtime exception. And we have what? IO exception. IO exception is checked or unchecked? Checked exception. Checked exception means compiler is checking. Servlet exception is checked exception or unchecked exception? Checked exception. Checked exception means what? This one, I mean, compiler is checking. Interrupt exception checked. Now compiler is checking. But among all these 4, one exception is not checking by compiler. What is that? Runtime exception. So among all the 4 kids, one of exception is what? Unchecked exception. So that's what this exception class is. Fully checked exception or partially checked exception?
Partially checked exception.
In the same way, throwable also. Okay, throwable fully checked exception or partially checked exception, guys?
Partially.
Partially.
Okay, partially checked exception. Clear, everyone?
Yes.
So do you know now? We have clarity. What is checked exception? What is what is fully checked exception? What is partially checked exception?
Yes, sir.
Any question?
Yes.
Right. So now let me write, guys. What is partially checked exception? Tell me what is partially checked exception. Only these 2 classes are okay, comes under partially checked exception. Now fully checked exception. Tell me what are the example? IO exception. IO exception is what? Fully checked exception. Right? Next. INTERRUPT. Interrupt exception, guys. So interrupt exception also fully checked exception. Clear? Guys, clear, everyone?
Yeah.
Okay. Now I will
Yes, sir.
I will tell few of the exception classes. Please tell me among these which one is checked exception, which one is unchecked exception. Okay. So now IO exception. Let me write. Tell me IO exception. Tell me which is checked exception or unchecked exception. Tell me, guys. IO exception. Yeah, checked exception and fully checked exception. Right? Now runtime exception. Tell me runtime exception.
Sir,
Next interrupted exception. Tell me,
Checked
guys,
exception.
interrupted exception.
fully checked exception.
Fully checked exception. Okay. Error. Error. Come on.
Unchecked.
Unchecked exception.
Unchecked exception. Throwable. Throwable.
Partially checked exception.
Partially checked exception.
Yeah, partially checked exception. Arithmetic exception. Arithmetic exception. Now tell me, arithmetic exception comes under checked exception or unchecked exception?
Unchecked exception.
Unchecked.
Null pointer exception.
Unchecked exception.
Exception.
Sir?
Exception.
Partially
Checked
checked exception.
Partially checked exception. File not found exception.
Checked exception.
checked exception.
Okay, checked exception. Right, guys. So now I think we completed what is unchecked exception, what is checked exception, and what is the difference between unchecked and a checked exception, and what is fully checked exception, and what is partially checked exception.